Effective immediately, I am canceling the last administration's completely one-sided deal with Cuba.
U.S. President Donald Trump announces a tough new policy towards Cuba. Hello, I'm Nathan King, sitting in for Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Hello again. It was nearly 2 years ago when U.S. President Barack Obama and Cuban leader Raul Castro agreed to reopen embassies in each other's capitals, officially restoring diplomatic relations for the first time since 1961. But that was then, and this is now. In a speech before a partisan crowd in Miami, Mr. Trump said he was canceling the agreement between his predecessor and the Cuban President Raul Castro, while leaving certain aspects of it in place. The speech comes on the same day the Cuban leader announced plans to retire next year, ending nearly 60 years of the Castro brothers' rule. For more on the U.S. president's speech, we turn to CGTN's Sean Callebs in Miami. And Sean, the expectation was that Mr. Trump was going to announce a partial rollback in travel and trade. He seems to have gone further, didn't he?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting to watch it play out here in South Florida, where any kind of discussion about U.S.-Cuba policy elicits a very passionate response. But you're right, it was a rollback. It was not a reversal. Still, it is a sharp detour from the measures that were approved by Presidents Barack Obama and Raul Castro. Donald Trump is going down a very different path, and one that played well to hardliners in Miami.
U.S. President Donald Trump was among friendly faces, Cuban Americans who want the U.S. to renew its strict approach with the Castro government.
I am so thrilled to be back here with all of my friends in Little Havana.
In one fell swoop, Trump worked to undo efforts by former President Barack Obama to normalize relations with Cuba that were decades in the making. As of now, U.S. travel to Cuba is suddenly much more difficult, and it's going to be harder for U.S. companies to do business with Havana.
We will enforce the ban on tourism. We will enforce the embargo. We will take concrete steps to ensure that investments flow directly to the people.
Business deals and contracts already on paper can apparently move ahead. Flights and cruise ships will continue going to Havana. And it's still legal for U.S. citizens to buy Cuban rum and cigars. But the Trump administration is blocking any U.S.-based companies from doing business with companies owned or operated by the Cuban military. That's important because it accounts for a significant percentage of the business dealings on the island nation.
No Trump, no KKK, no racist USA.
Outside, Trump supporters and those who oppose the president and his policies were separated by a road, but their ideologies are miles apart.
I think what this does is create more of a divide, and that's not the America that I want my family to be a part of.
I am totally opposed to any travel to Cuba, any money, anything that is sent to Cuba, even charitable.
I think this is a different America, not the America that I came here to live for.
The dozen or so Trump supporters back a plan to put the economic squeeze on the Castro government, a measure that has not worked in close to 60 years.
We are trying to choke the economy of that country. That's the only thing that's going to work.
Trump did offer what he considers an olive branch to Cuban leaders, saying he will be willing to negotiate a new deal, but under certain circumstances.
So we will respect Cuban sovereignty, but we will never turn our backs on the Cuban people. That will not happen.
Trump delivered a very hard-line speech, but at the same time, he also said that every nation should be allowed to choose its own path. Well, the embassies of the two nations will remain open in Washington and in Havana. But Nathan, after today's tough talk, it is hard to imagine that these two will be at the negotiating table anytime soon.
Thanks, Sean. That's CGTN Sean Callebs reporting from Miami.